These words, spoken in the film Adam, are more than a piece of dialogue between two women. These words are the subtle critique by director Mariam Touzani on the role of women's bodies, choices, and grief in Moroccan society. Hi, my name is Deze, and in today's video essay, I'll show you how Adam, the 2019 debut feature by filmmaker Mariam Touzani, not only tells the intimate and truthful story about women's solidarity, but also marks important developments in contemporary Moroccan cinema, expanding voices and shifting toward an intimate social realism. What is the film about? Adam follows the connection and growing bond between two women. Samia is young and unwed and pregnant, and after being rejected by her family, is forced to wander the streets to look for work and a place to stay. The woman who eventually and reluctantly takes her in is Abla, a widow and mother to the young Warda. While she encourages her daughter's education and growth, she seems to be stuck in her own grief from the death of her husband. The film explores themes of grief, motherhood, and most prominently, solidarity between women and the social margins occupied by single mothers. To make sense of the film, let's first take a look at the historiography of film in Morocco. For a long time, film was used as a way for occupying France to rewrite Moroccan history and identity, whether it was through Orientalized myth-making or through an ethnographic tradition of justifying France's imperialism. It is no surprise then that after Morocco gained its independence in 1956, with the return of King Mohammed V, that film was repurposed to shape cultural contours and to distribute propaganda to create a national consciousness of Morocco as an independent nation, but also to give form to Moroccan independent identity. The independence years were followed by the Led Years, which lasted from 1966 to the early 90s. And this was an era full of secrets and iron rule, as it was described by Valerie Orlando in the text Screening Morocco, Contemporary Cinema in a Changing Society. Although even in these years Morocco never knew much official state censorship, most authors and filmmakers practiced a lot of self-censorship, specifically around the topics of religion, monarchy, but also sexuality and nudity. We see a shift in the early 1990s as the reigning authoritarian regime started to crumble, specifically in terms of the themes and the use of film in a social-political sense. Towards the end of the 1990s, the Moroccan film industry saw an increase in social-political critique, both in subtle and in overt ways. However, despite the increased diversity in narratives, and voices represented in Moroccan cinema, the portrayal of women often remained embedded in stereotypes, patriarchal norms, and the male gaze. It became increasingly important as a mode of showing female issues, and that there was a growth in female-directed and written films in Moroccan cinema. El Falak and Enam describe in their feminist analysis of Adam that the impact of Moroccan women's filmmaking extends beyond the realm of cinema, as their work triggers a lot of important conversations about women's rights and social justice in Morocco, not only locally but also on an international scale. Intimist style of filmmaking, focusing on domestic social realism, using texture and sensation as main drivers behind plot and emotion. The film is quite low on dialogue, but we get loads of continuous shots of the women kneading dough, both in a work-oriented or frustrated manner, mostly from Abla, but also in a loving and caressing manner later on by Samia. We get sequences of Warda's soft caressing of Samia's pregnant belly, balanced by the obvious discomfort of Samia walking alone on the streets in Casablanca looking for work. These physicals, combined with emotional intensity of scenes, creates a sort of haptic visibility to bring across a bigger meaning through the senses. These physical intensities wordlessly bring across the balance between the private and the public sphere that women are constantly forced to navigate around. This focus on domesticity of the women is also marked by the use of film techniques, mostly of the intense close-up, and this showcases the confined nature of these women's lives. Even when we get shots of the city, we rarely see the open sky, and the chaos on the streets is almost seen as claustrophobic. The few times we do see the sky are the scenes on the roof, where the women are protected by the privacy of their own home while still being outside. This is the place where we see Warda and Samia letting loose and chasing each other around very lovingly, but also where we get the monologue by Abla, finally showing us her real feelings and telling us the story about how her husband died and how this has affected her life. These being the only scenes where we see an open sky is symbolic for this roof being a safe space for these women. Next to visuals, sound is another way that Tuzani brings across emotions and connection between her characters. For the most part, Adam is marked by its quietness and uses silence very deliberately. However, there are a few moments when music emerges and it carries an immense emotional and symbolic weight. For most of the film, the sound is dominantly diegetic. So, for example, sounds from the streets coming through the window or the radio being on in the background. But when music finally does come through, this is more of an intrusion of memory and feeling than just ordinary music in the background. In one of the film's most heartfelt scenes, we see that Samia insists that Abla listens to a song that was once loved by her late husband, and which he has avoided since his death. The song is by Algerian singer Warda Al Jazaria, who Alba also named her daughter after. And the song functions as a type of nostalgia, but it is more than that. Scholar Mariam notes that this music symbolizes a return of the repressed. So this symbolizes Alba's grief for her husband, but also through her dancing and later the inspection of her whole body in her bed, we can also see that it brings back her sensuality and her womanhood, which she has repressed since the death of her husband. In this sense, Tuzani uses music as a bridge between silence and expression, and between what Moroccan women are expected to express and what they feel internally and can only showcase in the quarters of their own home. Tuzani herself does not view her films as political. She says in an interview, "I think that naturally I am touched by all these voiceless stories, all these people that cannot have a chance to talk about their experience. Maybe it's taboo because it's not spoken of. To be able to help give them a voice through a film, to be able to make them exist, make their stories exist, make their stories important and make their stories be heard, for me, that's something special. I don't know if I would call it political cinema." So although her work might not be intentionally or outwardly political, through its intimate lens and restrained storytelling, Adam offers a new insight into the way women's lives and experiences are politicized anyway. By focusing on gestures, domestic spaces, and small acts of care, Tuzani builds a world where the political emerges from the personal. Music, silence, and touch become her tools of resistance and articulate what has long been left unsaid about women's bodies, grief, solidarity, and their experiences in general. By doing so, Tuzani not only redefines the Moroccan cinematic landscape, but also extends an invitation to listen, to feel, and to see women's stories as central to the nation's cultural narrative, a narrative that matters.